Good evening. Welcome to the March meeting of the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority Commission. I am Andrew Taherzadeh, Assistant Director of Communications at the EDA. I am your moderator for this meeting, which means I will have control over the audio functions of this Zoom call, and I will control the slides that will be used for the meeting. At this time, I would like to ask all those on this call to mute themselves. Now, I would like to welcome members of the commission to the meeting. Vice Chair, James Quigley, Secretary, Ron Johnson, and members, Rocky Mitchell, Stephen, Rick Wagner, FCEDA President and CEO Victor Hoskins, and Executive Vice President Alex Imes are on the call. As of EDA Council, Mike Graff, a number of EDA staff members, consultants who represent the EDA in offices overseas.
Hey, Andrew,
California.
Andrew, having tremendous feedback. I can ask you on mute, help Andrew out.
Thanks, James. Yes, if we could have everybody please mute themselves at this time.
Try it again, Andrew.
Thanks. So FCEDA President and CEO Victor Hoskins and Executive Vice President Alex Imes are on the call, as are EDA Counsel Mike Graff, a number of EDA staff members, consultants who represent the EDA in offices overseas and California, and our marketing communications consultants. I would also like to welcome Fairfax County officials who have joined us for the meeting, as well as our guest speaker for tonight, David Ritchie from JBG Smith. This is a public meeting of the commission and is being recorded. Presenting from the FCEDA tonight will be Vice Chair James Quigley, President Victor Hoskins, Executive Vice President Alex Imes, Director of Talent Initiatives Michael Batt, and Vice President of Communications Alan Fogg. Members of the FCEDA Commission who have questions will have the opportunity to ask questions as they normally would during meetings. If anyone from the public has any questions, please select the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen to ask a question, or email Cheryl Martelli of the FCEDA. Cheryl's email address will be posted in the chat box. We will not answer questions from the public during the meeting, but we will respond to all questions in writing afterward. So with that, I will ask Vice Chair Quigley to begin the agenda.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm honored to take the lead position tonight, as Kathy is out doing her patriotic duty to get the COVID vaccine shot, which she had her second shot today, and we're certainly looking forward to seeing her back in the chair position. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our March meeting. We have a interesting meeting tonight. In addition to the regular items, we're delighted to have David Ritchie here, an executive with JBG Smith, to discuss return to office strategies and the work that his firm is doing in Fairfax County, as well as with HQ2 in Arlington County. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is approve the minutes of our last meeting. I'm going to make one minor note up front, which is the last version of the minutes that were sent out by Cheryl corrected an error that Secretary Johnson noted, and Cheryl has since sent back a revised set of minutes. Effectively the only change was the reordering to the commissioners based on role, as should be in the meeting minutes. Secretary Johnson, I think that clarifies the change in the last version of the minutes, which were just sent out just recently. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February meeting?
Moved, Rocky Mitchell.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second, Rick Wagner.
Any discussion? I call the question. Council will call the roll.
Very good. Vice Chairman Quigley.
Aye.
Secretary Johnson.
Aye. Aye.
Treasurer Partridge,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
approve,
Mr. Wagner.
Aye.
The minutes are approved.
Fantastic. We're now going to move to our treasurer's report. Treasurer Partridge, turn over the floor to you to present the financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's only been 2 weeks since we had our last meeting, and so not a lot to report on the February budget items, since not much has changed. We continue internally to reallocate travel funds to other programs across the organization to kind of spend those down, since obviously no travel was occurring this year. I am happy to report that the county executive presented his proposed FY22 budget to the Board of Supervisors at their February meeting. The budget maintains our current level of spending for the EDA, but does not provide cost of living increases for staff. The Board of Supervisors will discuss in the April meeting and approve in May. Hopefully we don't expect any surprises for the EDA budget. And unless there's any questions, that is my report.
Awesome. Thank you, Treasurer Partridge. We're going to introduce our speaker for tonight. And I want to say right up front too, I've been incredibly proud of what the staff's put together during COVID with regard to our speakers, providing us valuable insight. And tonight is going to be no different. But I'll just want to take us back a little bit. In the fall, we began a series of guest speakers to provide the commission and staff with various perspectives about post COVID-19 economic recovery. Clearly a topic that is top of mind for not only Fairfax County and the Commonwealth of Virginia, but certainly throughout the United States and the world. These thought leaders have been helping us provide strategic vision and understanding as well as we can about the future and what we should see next. I do want to review some of the speakers we've had because again, I'm incredibly proud of what the team has put together. We kicked off this series with Fairfax County Executive Brian Hill. And since then, we've hosted Gregory Washington, president of George Mason University, Stephen Murray, president and CEO of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership down in Richmond, Brian Kenner, Brian Stout, and Broderick Green, the 3 Bs, if you remember, from Amazon, Deborah Ratner Salzberg of RMS Investment Group, and last month at our retreat, we had Spencer Levy of CBRE. Tonight, we are pleased to have with us David B. Ritchie, the Executive Vice President and Director of Commercial Leasing and Asset Management at JBG Smith, a name we certainly all know. An S&P 400 company that owns, operates, invests, and develops a dynamic portfolio of high-growth, mixed-use properties in and around Washington, D.C. We will discuss return to office strategies and the work that his firm is doing in Fairfax County, as well as with HQ2 in Arlington County. David is responsible for leading all aspects of commercial leasing and asset management for the company's operating office portfolio, which consists of approximately 11 million square feet, in addition to a substantial under construction portfolio and future development pipeline throughout the Washington, D.C. region. David leads a team of professionals whose core responsibilities include leasing and marketing strategy, asset repositioning, property level budgeting, and forecasting, along with other functions. He joined the JBG companies in January 2017, following the announcement of the pending spinoff merger with the Washington, D.C. portfolio of Vornado Realty Trust and Charles E. Smith. He played a leading role in the successful merger of the two companies with a focus on the integration of the office operating teams. David's accomplishments also include active participation in the marketing and transaction negotiation process, which led to the successful award of Amazon's new headquarters in National Landing, located in Arlington County. Clearly one of JBG's diamonds in their portfolio. He is now part of the team who is responsible for the continued transformation of a 6 million square foot operating office portfolio within the urban submarket. Prior to joining JBG Smith, David was a senior vice president at CBRE, where he completed a wide range of office leasing, investment sales, and national consulting assignments. He represented several of the region's most prominent landlords in their repositioning, rebranding, and leasing strategies. Prior to CBRE, he worked as a development executive at Clark Realty Capital and Acquisitions and Development. He began his career as a commercial real estate broker for the CAC Group, a boutique commercial real estate firm in San Francisco, and was subsequently acquired by CBRE. He holds a master's degree in real estate development from MIT and a Bachelor of Arts degree in European history from Washington University. And with that, we're so very proud to have you here tonight, David. Not only an amazing background, but from a family, a legitimate royal family of real estate in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So welcome, David. Thank you for honoring us with your presence, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentation tonight.
Well, James, it's totally my pleasure to be here. I'm grateful to you and the board and Victor for including me this evening and listening to that list of speakers that you've already had during the pandemic here. That's quite a list, so tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. Also, just want to start off by saying thanking the entire board for your service, what you're doing within the county to ensure continued economic development is so critically important, really to make sure that not only Fairfax County, but the entire Washington, D.C. region remains one of the best places in the country to do business, and your continued outreach to attract and retain great companies in our region. Just on a personal level, I'm personally really grateful for the economic development work in this region. I had the chance to grow up in Fairfax County. I'm the proud product of Fairfax County Public Schools. My parents bought their first home, townhouse in Burke, Virginia, in 1976, which is the year I was born, for those looking to do the math. And just, I look back on my experience growing up in this community, in this county, and sincerely believe in retrospect just how important economic development was to the great schools in our region, the safe streets, the cultural and charitable organizations. No doubt, there's a strong nexus there between great communities and great economic development. So on a personal level, I sincerely thank all of you and look forward to the discussion tonight. This is also really fun for me to do. I had the chance to spend some time with Victor preparing for this meeting. Victor and I have known each other for about a decade, but as you referenced kindly in talking about my background, had the chance to work side by side with Victor on the successful pursuit of HQ2. Both of us had the chance to be in the room where it happens, to quote the musical Hamilton. And it was a great professional highlight of my career, but also, as we all know, when you get to work side by side with an individual on something that's big and complex and important, you learn a lot about that person. And my respect and appreciation for Victor as a professional and as a friend is just immense. And so pleasure to be here. And I know that the topic of the discussion here is return to work, which we'll cover. I'm also happy to leave plenty of time at the end for question and answer. Like this to be, a discussion. I know it's challenging with the size of the group and via Zoom, but if you feel the need to, interrupt or want to ask a question, really want to be as helpful as I can in answering anything that's relevant to this group. So with that, if I think it was Andrew that maybe is controlling the screen, if you don't mind going to the next slide, please. Just to kick it off, and again, James, you covered a number of these stats, so I won't belabor the point, but JBG Smith, we're a public real estate investment trust, 100% focused on the Washington, D.C. market. Our office operating portfolio is just over 11 million square feet, which makes us one of the largest owners, operators of office product throughout the Washington, D.C. region. I won't touch on the other stats here on the screen, But I do think that, one of the things that hopefully is relevant to our conversation tonight is that because we are one of the largest landlords in the DC region, that I can share a little bit with you all about what's going on with our portfolio as perhaps a microcosm or bellwether in terms of the broader market in local economic conditions. So I get asked a few questions a lot right now by various people in the industry. One of the questions is, the tour activity within your office portfolio, how does it compare today versus where it was, call it 13 months ago, pre-pandemic? So the reality is that in terms of the level of activity we're seeing in our office portfolio, in terms of just groups reaching out, wanting to tour our properties, it's about 25% of pre-pandemic levels. So it's obviously significantly less, which is understandable, given the current still largely work from home dynamic that we're seeing across the region. But what I will say is that while our overall volume is down, I would say there's a little bit of a quality versus quantity type of dynamic where the groups that are out looking for space, tend to have real needs and a sense of urgency around doing something. So a little bit of a silver lining there. Another question we get asked a lot is, where is building occupancy in terms of the actual number of tenants that are in your buildings on a day-to-day basis? We use obviously Castle and Data Watch as our electronic access point, so we're able to have a fairly good handle on the level of occupancy in our building. And I will tell you, last summer of 2020, we were sort of hovering in the 15 to 20% range. We did see an uptick in the fall, 25 to 30%. We saw a little bit of a pullback, in January, just with the weather. And now we're back up to kind of that 25 to 30% range. I will tell you that just over a week ago, we had our highest highest day of occupancy since the pandemic. And so we view that as a good sign, a leading indicator that occupancy to our buildings is starting to come back. And we're optimistic that with the continued distribution of the vaccine, that we're now at a place where for 25 to 30% today, we anticipate a steady uptick, kind of from here through the spring into the summer. And then our hope is that in the fall, we really start to see some level of return to work at or at least close to pre-pandemic levels. We also get asked a question a lot. Tell us about rent collections. Are your office tenants paying you rent? And this is an area where we are exceedingly grateful. On the office side, rent collections have stayed within the kind of 98 to 99% range month over month. And candidly, in my role, we pre-pandemic, accounts receivable rent collections were, something we took for granted, that we could just assume that our tenants would pay rent. The pandemic hit, and obviously we started to pay much more close attention. And but we are very grateful. We've been able to collect rents month over month, 98, 99%, which says a lot about our tenants and their commitment to returning to the office. So we're really grateful for that. And then last, just sort of high level observation. I know we all know this, and we talk about it a lot, but we really are fortunate to have the federal government in our marketplace. The GSA is our largest tenant on the lease side, and they're still very active. We're executing renewals with them, et cetera. So those are just some high level comments and observations about what we're seeing in our portfolio. From there, I was going to transition to just a couple other market observations, macro level market observations. So Andrew, if you don't mind going to the next slide. So here is just a quick snapshot in terms of employment. And again, I won't belabor this because you all are experts in economic development, and so probably no surprise. But one of the things that we're really encouraged by is the resiliency of the broader DC market. And I think employment is a great example of this. So here's a little slide that goes back to the prior recessions in the early 90s, the tech crash, and then of course the Great Recession of 08, 09. And even this past year in 2020, in every case, our market has performed better than the other major gateway markets as it relates to employment, or sort of the contraction in employment. So as we all know, we've had contraction in our employment base over the last year, but compared to the New Yorks and San Franciscos of the world, of course we've fared better, and that's been a historical trend over every major financial crisis that we've seen over the last 30 years.
This is Rocky Mitchell.
Yes,
Quick
sir.
question on this chart.
Mhm.
If we could somehow adjust for federal government employment, would this chart look any different than the other gateway cities for DC?
It's a great question, Rocky. I don't have those numbers in front of me. It's a fair question, and you know what? I think you're probably right. I mentioned just a second ago that the federal government is still active from an office leasing standpoint, and clearly they are a bit of a hedge as it relates to our employment. So I think you're right. If we were to pull that out, we might not be so different than the other gateway markets. But fortunately, we do have the federal government in our backyard, which helps these numbers. But I'll also make a note of that and work with our research team to see if I can answer that question more specifically for you offline. So if there's no other questions about this chart, I'll just move on to the next. Again, just trying to touch on some key themes here. This is interesting. There's been a lot of conversation around in the major urban areas, individuals fleeing, the big cities to go to lower population density areas as part of in response to COVID. And so we actually worked to pull FOIA and pull Postal Service data to look at and sort of monitor trends around this. And so this is basically showing the sort of the year-over-year increase from 2019 to 2020 of out-of-city migration from these major cities. I should note here that for this statistic, this is Washington, D.C. specific. The other charts that I'll show you are D.C. metro region, but this is D.C. specific. And so what you see here is that the percentage increase of out-of-city migration in places like Manhattan and San Francisco, you can see in the case of Manhattan, over a 100% increase year over year, much more significant than what Washington, D.C. Has experienced in terms of individuals leaving the urban center. One of the things that I should just be clear on this slide is this is truly individuals leaving to relocate to another part of the country. So this statistic doesn't account for individuals that may have left DC and relocated to suburban communities throughout the region. This is truly individuals that have left the DC area.
This is Rocky again. I'm sorry to be asking so many questions, but this is one of those charts that I'm not quite sure what to make of it. And the reason is, even though, say, a ton of people may leave Manhattan and San Francisco, these are the folks, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that still are employed with the same company and have the ability to telecommute. So that even though they may leave Manhattan and San Francisco and move to a different state or a different locality, their source of employment is still Manhattan and San Francisco with the big tech centers. So I'm not so sure what that tells me, because the other areas wouldn't be getting the beneficiary of, would not be the beneficiaries of commercial development. They may get some sort of taxes, but their locality would also be burdened with additional cost of schools, parks, and all of that stuff. I'm not quite sure what to make of this, except that it does show a migration out.
That's right. That's right. And to answer your question, that is correct. This is just showing the individual movement. It's not necessarily an indicator yet of any significant corporate movement. That's right. The takeaway here from our perspective is the relative resiliency of the DC region, though. That's at the end of the day, what we see here is that we think that this is one of many trends that when the economy, as the economy does transition and as there is a rebound, that DC is well positioned, and that we don't have as much ground to make up as some of the other major markets. So if we go to the next, so here's another one that, again, this is really, again, the theme is around the resiliency of our market. What we show here on the left-hand side, what is that office rents, office asking rents have not changed in the DC region statistically. So, which is another good sign, right? We have not seen landlords, drastically reduce rents in response to more anemic demand. We've seen, landlords' rents, effectively stay flat. And then on the occupancy side, the supply side, we have seen a change, but it has not been, again, as drastic or as significant, I should say, as the other major markets. So just another trend that we're monitoring closely. Again, around the theme that, yes, there are challenges in our region, but relative to the other gateway markets, we feel like the DC region as a whole and Fairfax County are well positioned relative to other parts of the country. So from there, if we can just go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to transition as we think about return to work. One of the things that we have worked and focused very heavily on, really going back to last spring, is what we call our Healthy Workplace Blueprint. And so, a real concentrated effort to address the physical and operational changes that we've implemented across our commercial portfolio to make sure that our buildings are safe and ready for occupants when our tenants are ready to come back. This is something we worked on last spring, and if anything, we were at the time, I think, clearly optimistic that our tenants would be back by last summer, and that we needed to hurry up and have this plan in place. And so we invested heavily in a workplace blueprint, made a number of different operational and physical changes to our building. Probably a lot of the things that you all have seen if you have been in any office buildings, touch-free spaces, queuing areas, much more robust, increased cleaning protocols, regular sanitization practices, heavy emphasis on indoor air quality. And so we think that these things are here to stay. And we feel like having best-in-class plans and procedures around these items are important today. And a lot of this stuff that we believe will have staying power and is increasingly important to our customer. And therefore, it's very important to us. I'll keep going. The next slide, if that's okay, please. Now I'm going to transition and talk just a little bit about Amazon in HQ2. And I know I heard that you all had the Amazon team on, it sounds like just maybe a few weeks or months ago. So I won't belabor this or repeat many of their commentary, probably some of their commentary, but as I look back on the experience that Victor and I and others had in terms of landing HQ2, two things come to mind that I think were critical success factors out of the gates. First and foremost was the talent that we have in the DC region. So, probably not a surprise to anybody on this phone, but on this call, but clearly the depth and breadth of our talent in the DC region was a major, critical success factor. And that really, again, kudos and compliments to all of you, because you're a key part of that. But having the talent here, I think, was front and center in the Amazon decision. The second is, again, to compliment Victor, and I know you all had Steve and Murray on the phone, was the coordination and partnership between economic development and a landlord developer. The partnership in the way that we work together lockstep. And as you all will recall, there was a period before Amazon focused on Arlington County, where Amazon was considering a number of locations throughout the Commonwealth, including locations in Fairfax County. And during that period, Stephen and VEDP I think they did an excellent job of maintaining a level playing field. But when it was determined in the later innings that the focus for HQ2 in the Commonwealth was in a specific location, the way that we were able to come together in partnership was absolutely critical to our success. And again, credit Victor for his leadership in that regard. I'm sure you all know, minimum commitment is 25,000, could be up to 38,000 jobs. They just hit their first sort of incentive-based hiring goal of 1,600. We believe, I'm not sure if Brian shared anything different in the team, but everything that we've heard is that they're having really good success in hiring, and that they're very happy with their decision to be a part of Northern Virginia. And again, I think this is I wanted to just touch on it, and I'm happy to answer questions during Q&A, but this is a great economic development win for us all. And I've had the chance to spend time in other parts of the country post HQ2 announcement. And this is in talking about the sort of the critical success factors. And this is a win for all of Northern Virginia. It's a validator for all of Northern Virginia in terms of what we have to offer from an economic development standpoint, our coordination with VEDP in the Commonwealth. So I'll stop there, but if there's questions about HQ2, I'm happy to cover it during any Q&A. We keep going. So I want to close though, and kind of finish the conversation with what's going on with JBG Smith in Fairfax County. We are really grateful to be major landowners, property owners, investors, developers in Fairfax County. We're grateful for the partnership with Victor, with all of you. And we have some really important projects, and candidly would love to work with you all. We could use your help. And so this first one on the screen here, a few of us were talking about this. It's sort of as everybody was joining the meeting. This is a project, Rtc West. This is in Reston, just to the immediately adjacent to Reston Town Center. So as a point of reference, if you've been to Cooper's Hawk, that's the property that you see here on the screen. Cooper's Hawk is kind of that little low-rise building in the lower left-hand corner. That's Cooper's, there you go, thank you. That's Cooper's Hawk. There's 3 existing office buildings, about 500,000 square feet that we own and operate today. Some of our best performing office buildings in our entire portfolio. And we have two development sites that are the surface parking lots that are there today. One is a 300,000 square foot building that we call Trophy. That's the building, our Trophy building on the left. And then the building on the right is about 150,000 square feet. That's what we call our Jewel Box. And so two different offerings here. The building on the left, just from a scale standpoint, is comparable in scale and height to the new Fannie Mae Tower that is literally just east of us on the other side of Town Center Parkway. So really excited about these buildings. As I mentioned, the three existing buildings are some of our best performing office buildings in the portfolio. And this development site is incredibly exciting to us. I think our chances of success to pre-lease and develop one of these buildings in the next 12 months is as good as any office site we have in our portfolio. So spending a lot of time marketing these buildings, talking about the benefits of Fairfax County, and we're all in on this and would love to partner with you all. The second one that I wanted to talk about, and it's my final slide, and then I'll leave time for Q&A. We also own a property that is at the Wheelie Avenue in the Toll Road location. So for those of you that know where Reston Station is today, we're just to the east of that. We own a property there called Midline. We also have a 250,000 square foot office building that fronts the toll road. Again, right at Wheelie Avenue in the toll road, near Metro. The balance of the property is currently planned and entitled for multifamily, although this is a sort of a schematic plan that we have that shows how we could accommodate up to 1 million square feet of office on this site. It would require, the first 250,000 square feet is per the current zoning. The rest would require a rezoning. So I'm not representing at all that there wouldn't be a process associated with that, but we are really excited about our holdings here as well in terms of two very large, very marketable, high-profile office opportunities. So that really concludes the the slides in the formal part of my discussion. I really would love to answer questions. And again, I just thank you all for the opportunity and for all of your efforts. I sincerely mean it when I say that your work is vital to our community, and I thank you.
Thank you, David. I know my colleagues will have questions too, but let me, as they're forming their questions, I'll serve up a few for you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for for JBG's investment in Fairfax County. Those are obviously two very exciting locations. I know them really well based on where my offices are based and where I live. Would love to, and by the way, thank you for your thoughts with regard to the return to office strategies and some of the metrics around that too. It's fascinating to hear, as low as people were returning to the office during the pandemic, how you guys have kept a very resilient customer base, which is exciting to hear.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear, and you showed a lot of this in your pictures. I'd love to hear a little bit about the importance of placemaking and attracting tenants and talent, and how you've thought about not only the Amazon space, but some of the spaces you showed in some of the locations. You reference a lot of placemaking elements. Talk to us a little bit about placemaking and attracting work talent.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question, and it is, the little bit of the background you mentioned. JBG Smith is the result of a merger back in 2017 of the JBG companies, which was a 50-year-old private developer and investor in the DC area, with at the time Vornado Charles E. Smith. And at the time, Vornado, which is a New York-based company, had determined that they wanted to focus on New York and wanted to no longer were looking for a significant presence in the DC market, and teamed up and put together a merger with JBG. And JBG was so excited to get involved in the Vornado portfolio because their background is in specialty is in urban placemaking. And JBG has a long history of focusing on well-located, transit-oriented, either locations within the city itself or locations where they saw the fundamentals of a street grid and street retail and the right balance and mix of office and in multifamily and retail. That's really JBG's background. And the company was involved in the resurgence of the 14th Street corridor and U Street, et cetera. And so placemaking has always been an important part of the JBG and now JBG Smith model. And so, for example, take Crystal City. When JBG got involved there, what was recognized is right now the balance from office to multifamily is out of balance, where there's 50,000 individuals that go to work there, but there's not enough housing to accommodate that workforce. And with HQ2, that's only widened, really increased the demand for additional housing. So we have a plan to bring over 3,000 apartments to that neighborhood, for example. So it's incredibly important, James. What's really interesting, though, to me is we're also, and I know you all are talking about this and exploring it as well, is we're very focused on our smart city infrastructure digital master plan, making sure that we are early in having 5G technology and having 5G. This is public. We went out and bought at auction the commercial broadband spectrum, which gives us a layer of connectivity, cell tower connectivity in our neighborhood as part of our smart city digital master plan. So that's about the level of my expertise. So I can't go too much further on the infrastructure itself. You and others would probably understand it much more. But what I can tell you is we're extremely excited about it in terms of what it offers to our tenants, in terms of having a level of connectivity and what we think that will mean for the tenant experience 2, 3, 5 years down the road, both in terms of what we call our urban operating system. So the ability for tenants, companies to come in and test case their latest technologies in an urban area. So as we think about placemaking, it's sort of it's the mix of uses, and it's the open space, and it's the streetscape. But I'm really also very excited about smart city in our work just over the last 12 months to really advance that piece as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that, for clarifying a little bit more deeply.
Sure.
Talk about infrastructure and certainly some of the things you guys have done for placemaking. I'll leave it open to the rest of the commissioners if they have any other questions.
Yeah, David, I had a question. I spent most of my career in very traditional office space with individual offices, and now I find myself at Microsoft, and the culture there is much more density. Matter of fact, as a corporate vice president, the idea is that I'm going to have this like 8-person office that's all integrated together. Very inconsistent with what you're presenting as the new normal for office space. Are you seeing any culture clash there of the kind of highly collaborative, densely packed office space versus what it's going to take to be able to social distance?
It's a great question, Rick. It's the big question, I believe, over the next 12 months as companies return to work. As you know, every decision maker, I believe that every decision maker in America through this process is rethinking their office space needs and space utilization and asking themselves these same questions. And there's a lot of debate in our industry right now over what will prevail. Will some level of work from home, sort of hybrid flex work, prevail, which will mean a reduction in space needs? And how is that counterbalanced at all by the need for more space, for the individual? Because as you probably know, over the last 10 years, we've seen this densification where the space, allocated per employee is become incredibly dense and very small. And so, we're going to learn a lot over the next 12 months. A couple of things I think that are absolutely key. One is, because everybody's asking themselves the question, I think there's going to be a lot of activity in the market. And so I think that there's going to create really interesting opportunities for your board from an economic development standpoint to attract and retain new businesses, because I believe every business in America is asking themselves this question. And so even if there's headwinds or in reduction in space needs, there's going to be a level of activity in the market, and Fairfax County clearly is well positioned to secure more than your fair share. And so I think there's great opportunity there just by churn. The last thing I'll say is that I believe that in order to encourage employees to come back to work, employers are going to need to provide a workplace experience that's better than what they provided before in order to induce their employee base to come back to the office. So I think you'll see an upgrade in space utilization. I think you'll see more interest in new construction, companies more focused on indoor air quality, better quality buildings. And so I think both activity and new development, we could see an uptick there coming out of this, which of course is great for Fairfax County from an economic development standpoint.
Thanks. I think you're right. I think the shifting around and the changes that people are making is where we're probably going to have to focus.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. But I think there's going to be huge opportunity coming out. This one of the things, just from a management standpoint in my role here, is, it's going to be a great opportunity to redefine or adjust some cultural norms within the workplace. As everybody comes back, we're thinking about, okay, what changes do we want to make our, we pride ourselves on a great culture. We've been very fortunate to be ranked as a great place to work within the Washington region. But, you're sort of using this as an opportunity to say, what more can we do to kind of, as people come back, and make sure that we have an even more welcoming, more inclusive, stronger culture as our employees return to our workplace here. So,
David, just maybe to clarify one thing you're saying, and maybe I'll just reframe it and see if you're saying the same thing. And we'll go back to the slide that Commissioner Mitchell was talking about. If we are seeing large technology companies who are they're giving the freedom for workers to work remotely. We've certainly seen this. Facebook has said that they're going to offer up potentially up to 100% of their employees to be able to work remote right in the future. And we've heard some other big tech companies who are making similar-ish statements. So people then flee some of these locations, like San Francisco, certainly New York for maybe other reasons. Does that open up then that the reason why these companies went to some of these locations in the past was workforce? Hey, I can get my workforce here. There's a high density of workforce. But if the workforce starts leaving, does that open up an ability for companies to go, well, I was headquartered here because of that? If that's not the case, maybe I could be open to moving to another location that gets me some other benefit, closer to government, because government and tech is going to be a future friction point that they're going to have to solve. Taxes, whatever it might be, cost of living. Is that what you're saying, that there's maybe an opportunity for companies who are maybe going to look at more dramatic shifts because workforce is moving?
I do. I think that, again, I'm an optimist. So, but I really do. I think that there's going to be, there's going to be a level of activity, a level of churn in the market, because I really believe that every real estate decision maker is thinking about these things right now, and they're going to explore options. And I look at our track record collectively in Northern Virginia over the last decade, and I think that we're very well positioned to, to attract and retain and lure some other major relocations to this region.
James, I have one question to ask you, David. First of all, David, I just want to compliment your company for acquiring some spectrum. I think as you begin to think about how you can create a smart city environment with all the buildings that you have around town, I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Using 5G as a platform. My question, though, relates to some conversation we had from Amazon when they were here, and they spoke about their desire and their plans to look at affordable housing as a major objective. And I'm curious whether or not JBG and your partner, JP Morgan, and I'm sure you have thought about this, what are your plans to work with Amazon as they try to roll out more affordable housing for our region?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great question. And even prior to HQ2, that process starting, we had, shortly after we became a public company, we set up what's called the Washington Housing Initiative, which is it's affiliated with our public company, but it sits outside of the REIT, where we went out and raised capital primarily from banks that have community reinvestment funds to invest in a investment vehicle to go out and largely buy existing apartments throughout the Washington, D.C. region with a cap on rent to make sure that it's at a level that's affordable to a certain band of average median income. And so we raised a fund around that. It's called the Washington Housing Initiative. We set up the Washington Housing Conservancy, or at least we were very helpful in setting that up, which manages these apartments. And just within the last, probably 60 days, we assisted Amazon with a major acquisition called the Crystal House, which happens to sit right across the street from the future HQ2. And so, Amazon's the big investor on that. They deserve the credit. But I am proud of our role that we played with them in terms of helping to, identify the opportunity, underwrite the opportunity, et cetera. So, I mentioned earlier that, my personal belief about how important economic development is to real community benefit. But there also, we all know there's areas like housing and traffic that we need to have smart solutions for as well. So we're focused on those things as well, and really excited about our ability to help Amazon effectively acquire workforce housing right across the street from their new headquarters.
Dave, this is Rocky. We've referenced becoming smart cities a lot. Relative to our area, how would you grade us in that effort? One. Then two, do you feel it's government driven or private sector driven, or there is sufficient coordination between the two sectors? And then how would we stack up against other major gateway cities?
Just in terms of smart city as a whole, smart city infrastructure. Yeah, it's a good question. I think that as you probably know, Rocky, I think we're early innings, sort of nationally, across the board. I don't think that there's anybody that I'm aware of that is, substantially out ahead of us. There's pockets, there's some areas in New York that have done some interesting things. Candidly, there's been a few areas around the country that have tried and haven't necessarily had as much success as they would like. But I don't see anywhere in the country that is, way out ahead of us with respect to these initiatives. And then I look at our fundamentals and I feel really good about it. I mean, you referenced the federal government, and I think that, you know, having areas within our broader region where leading companies can showcase their latest technologies, recognizing that the federal government is a huge consumer of, you know, technology, we think is really unique. And then second is we know we benefit from an unbelievable level of connectivity infrastructure, thanks to, you know, our friends to the west of us in Loudoun County in their data center infrastructure, and our ability to, you know, tap into that network of fiber infrastructure. So I think we have some really unique components. I will say, I think in Crystal City in Arlington County, we're really fortunate that because we we have an ownership position concentrated in a neighborhood, it allows us to do some things there that help. But I think overall, I think the entire region stands to benefit, both because of our proximity to the federal government and those doing business with the federal government, and then also the connectivity out to Ashburn.
Thanks.
David, Steve Partridge with Northern Virginia Community College. Quick question, as you think about placemaking, like James was talking about, so much of our talent pool is developed locally, not just brought in. How does higher ed or continuing education options play into placemaking when you're thinking about these larger developments?
Yeah, no, thank you, Steve. It's incredibly important. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, Victor has probably shared with you all, and you all know that, you know, Virginia Tech was part of the, infrastructure incentive package that was presented for HQ2. And so I think it's critical. And I also will say, you know, Steve, thank you for the fantastic work that your college is doing. Tremendous amount of respect. I took a class or two at the Annandale campus back in the day, and so know it, and just have a tremendous amount of respect. And you all play a critical role to the overall economic development picture of our region. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we're seeing a lot of change come about because of the pandemic. I mean, students are actually, we actually saw our enrollment increase, which is a little countercyclical than other markets around the country that saw big drops. And a lot of it of what our students are saying is that they don't really like online, but they don't have to drive 45 minutes to an hour in traffic to get to classes. So once they come back, we could actually see our enrollment drop a little as sort of the reality of traffic kicks back in. But having maybe the model of less about focused campuses all across the region, maybe smaller locations in sort of densely populated areas might be a better way to go. But wondering just how that played in with the strategy of the bigger companies developing these sites.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I mentioned Virginia Tech, but we've had other universities approach us about being part of the neighborhood down, near Amazon. And so I think you're right. I think the satellite campus model is really, really an interesting one, and intuitively, could make a lot of sense in a post-pandemic world.
Thank you.
I want to be sensitive. I know you'll have a long agenda, so I'm happy to keep going, but I also want to be sensitive, James. I know you got a full agenda.
Unless there's any other questions, I'm going to thank David. Any other questions from our commissioners? Awesome. Thank you, David, for your insights.
Thank you, David.
To office, and
Thank you.
the work that JBG is doing in Fairfax, and certainly congratulations, and thanks for sharing the update on HQ2.
Absolutely, and like I said, it's a partnership for us. We're very, very focused on our continued success in Fairfax County. Anything I can do for this group, anytime, to be a great partner. We're here to support your efforts. And again, I just thank you for the really important work that you're doing for the community. So, and again, appreciate you having me tonight. So,
thanks, David.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll sign off now.
David.
Thanks. Okay, thanks again.
Take care, David.
Okay.
Okay, team, I'm going to go through the chair's report. There are no slides, but let me just go through. It's mostly an outline of what's going to happen next with regard to speakers over the next 3 months or so. For April's commission meeting, the guest speaker topic will be regional collaboration. Our speaker will be J.B. Holston, CEO of the Greater Washington Partnership, which works with the region's top businesses, academic, and civic leaders to influence and affect meaningful change on the most critical items facing the capital region. In May, we will host Jerome Davis, the EVP and Chief Revenue Officer at the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, for a discussion about how airline travel and Dulles International and Reagan National Airports have fared during the pandemic and what the outlook is for the rest of the year. I know something that our team was very interested in hearing about. In June, we will have Ann Kress, President of Northern Virginia Community College. So excited to have Ann with us. She's going to be here with us to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on exactly what Steve Partridge was talking about on educational institutions and the process for reopening, innovations in education taking place at Northern Virginia Community College, and the important work that NOVA is doing around workforce development, its collaboration with George Mason University and the business community. Another item, as you may recall, we proposed to the chairman of the Board of Supervisors that we would expand the FCEDA board with 2 additional commissioner positions. I've got some very exciting news. The proposal was approved by the General Assembly, and Governor Northam just signed it into measure last week. This is exciting news. We'll be adding, so ultimately what this means, we're going to be adding 2 new commissioners, likely in the July timeframe. Details will need to be confirmed, and there'll obviously be a process for which we will work with our Board of Supervisors and ultimately the chairman, whose ultimate decision it is to select our commissioners. Exciting news. We can get more voices that represent our community to help us at the EDA. With that, I'm going to turn over to our president, Victor Hoskins, to make his president's report. Victor?
Thank you very much, James. Really appreciate that. If we could bring my first slide up, please. Thank you. So it's been a very busy, couple of months. I did not report at the February meeting, so I do have a lot of elements, but I'll go through them quickly. First of all, we continue to work with Connected DMV. Connected DMV is the group that's working on regional development, what we've done in Northern Virginia with the 10 jurisdictions. We're actually trying to do that with 17 jurisdictions, and not just the economic development organizations, but also the universities and the private sector. We have a great group that we're working with. One of the key things that has come out of this is the quantum computing announcement. I don't know if you heard about that today. University of Maryland announced a $2 billion quantum computing effort jointly with the government. So that's one of the more exciting things that has come out of this. That work started a couple of years ago. It was accelerated around this time last year. We didn't think it would be coming up this fast, but thank goodness it has. Next slide, please. I've been working across the state, not just in the region. Dominion Energy put together a task force to focus on alternative energy sources. A lot of our companies now, particularly the larger companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, they're looking for non-carbon resources for energy. And one of those sources is wind power. And this was an effort about the wind farm that's being created in the lower part of the bay, just off the coast of Southern Virginia. Next slide, please. This was a great series of events. I had the opportunity to kick off the first one on air innovation, but we had participation in this from around the globe. We had, and I think the last session on February 10th, there were over 700 people registered for the event. We've never had that many registrations at any event. Thank goodness they all didn't show up, because I think our capacity was 500. Next slide, please. I've been continuing to work, not directly, but certainly in support of affordable housing. This was a panel that included a developer, Jair Lynch. I don't know how familiar people are with Jair Lynch, African-American. He was actually an Olympic athlete. I think he was a gold medalist. I can't remember which Olympics it was, quite a while back. But he was one of the panelists. It was myself and a couple of other professionals talking about what can be done to scale the production of housing. And one of the big things that we talked about was actually the equity fund, the $2 billion equity fund that Amazon has just announced. And we talked about efforts of trying to link Amazon, not just with developers like JBG Smith, but also with financing institutions like our Freddie Mac. And in that effort, last week on Friday, two of our team members, John Blair and Alex Staliker, helped arrange a meeting where we had executives from Freddie Mac together with executives from Amazon, and actually the person that runs the $2 billion equity fund on a call, and our director of housing development for Fairfax County. We connected them all together to talk about just conceptual ideas, brainstorming on, so how could we actually scale production in Fairfax and in the Northern Virginia region, and then allow them to repeat that model in other markets. Amazon was very excited about it, so was Freddie Mac. And actually, Tom Fleetwood, who's the director of the Housing Authority, was really excited because he looks at it as an alternative source of capital, which is essential for making these deals work. Next slide, please. So I had the opportunity to be part of the Minority Business Development Agency's first podcast. And Sharon Pender, who was the president and CEO of that organization, asked me to come on and talk about the kinds of things that we were doing, not just in Fairfax County, but all across Northern Virginia for minority businesses. I talked about things like the incredible RISE program that Rebecca Modry and her team, along with the Community Business Partnership at the GMU, and our team helped market and deliver to over 4,800 businesses, 72% which were minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. I talked about how we created these technical assistance seminars for PPP. We even did one bilingual. We had John Blair again. John Blair has been a superstar, I got to tell you. He's bilingual, so he did it in Spanish and English, which was fantastic. And that idea actually came from the team at the Department of Economic Initiatives. They really are trying to reach the companies that have been hurt the most by this, and so are we. Next slide, please. This item on filling a gap, this is all about talent, and obviously Mike Batt, ran this event. It was fantastic. The companies were quite delighted that we continue to find ways to add value and create opportunities for them to hire. Next slide, please. This was a really wonderful discussion about the Silver Line and the future of the Silver Line and that development process. Great group of panelists, both public and private sector. I was the moderator, and I have to say that it really shows how powerful and how important that Silver Line investment decision has been in the trajectory of our county and into the future of our county. Next slide. This was an event, Entrepreneurship 101. I don't know how many of you know Warren Thompson, but Warren Thompson is an incredible entrepreneur. He built his business here. He built it from humble beginnings to now an $800 million a year business. He has over 6,000 employees across the country and across the U.S. and he's in 2 foreign countries. He talked about a lot of things, the struggles of the entrepreneur. And now the first part of this session was all about resources. The second part was really about motivation and what it really takes to be an entrepreneur. And I have to say he did an excellent job. But I think the thing that impressed me the most was what Karen Schma said. She actually ran this event. She said that to whom much is given, much is required. And then she followed that up with, he and his organization has given over $50 million to historically Black colleges in the United States. Now, I got to tell you, that is doing what's required. Actually, that's doing more than what's required. I mean, I just think that is so wonderful that he didn't just develop his company, but he also reaches back. Next slide, please. So we have a housing symposium, and that's in just a couple of days now. It's on Thursday. I'm looking forward to this. We're doing this in conjunction with George Mason University. We're anticipating a big audience, but this is about alternative ways of developing affordable housing at scale. Next slide. And this regional economic development strategy, we continue to work on this, and I'm now going to turn this over to Alex Imes to give more detail. Alex?
Thank you, Victor, and good evening, commissioners and guests. I'd like to just speak a little bit about the development of the regional economic development strategy that's taken place over the past several months and where we are in the process now. If you go to the next slide, please. So as you have heard from Victor this evening, this effort brings together not only the economic development organizations and 17 different jurisdictions in the region, but also the private sector, academia, and various regional organizations. So it really is trying to leverage the full, the full capability of the region and bring it together in a way that doesn't exist today. We don't collaborate in terms of any initiatives or marketing activities, economic development with the other jurisdictions, and to bring in these other entities who already work together in certain ways and find some of the gaps. And that's the opportunity. So we don't have an umbrella organization right now for us to act together as a region for economic development. Next slide, please. Many of these names will look familiar, and what you see in the green there are representatives of the steering committee that we're working with and pinging ideas and meeting with on a regular basis from the public sector economic development organizations. And then in the orange, you see various representatives of regional organizations. And then in the blue, you have industry and community organizations, including representatives from academia. So it's a very exciting group to be working with. There's a lot of energy and great ideas. And these leaders have all been interviewed in depth. We've probably done about 30 interviews total to collect the perspectives on how best to proceed and really gain buy-in by going through the process together. And members of the teams who actually work under these people are part of a group that I've been leading with George Thomas from Connected DMV. And we've had 24 different members from 15 organizations participate on that group in terms of the development of our report and recommendations. Next, please. So one of the ways that we were recognized recently for this effort, and I think, go back, okay, was a resolution that was passed by the Council of Governments, recognizing that we have the opportunity to work together and we should be working together to attract business and strengthen talent and jointly represent our economy outside of this market and help develop the people and the workforce that we already have here. And so this was something that Victor and David Iannucci spoke to at our meeting earlier today. They spoke in the media about it a little bit. So this is just another foothold in the process, but it also an exciting announcement to be recognized by COG. Next, please. So here you see the timeline and the process that we've been going through since about the middle of October. And that has involved going through a research and discovery process, speaking with all the different leaders, doing research of best practices from across the country, and then really processing that through a DMV lens, because we are different than every other major region in the country. The things that make up our economy and the different ways that we can work together are different than those areas. And so we've been working on sifting through the opportunities for the past 8 weeks or so. And now we're coming to this home stretch of delivering a final report and determining that officially we want to work together on forming an alliance. And that'll happen at the next steering committee meeting in early April. Next, please. So of course, along with how we would work together, there's been many discussions on what we might work on together, and so the types of things, obviously branding and marketing is a natural area of alignment for the entire region. When you talk to people outside this market about the capital region or the DMV, they don't think of any one area, they think of the entire region. And so that's how we have the opportunity to represent ourselves to them as all of our assets being put forward. And then talent development, not only attracting talent, but cultivating and developing people who are already here in our university, community college, and even high school, grade school pipelines that can be productive parts of our workforce. All of this, it falls into, that it must serve equitable outcomes for the programs. We do have imbalance in the region and even within jurisdictions in the region. So there's been quite a lot of attention paid to, what parts of the region could use extra support from regional initiatives, and how do these efforts ultimately inform and achieve outcomes for, so that there's opportunity for everyone in this. And then there's a handful of these strategic initiatives that Victor, as a member of the Connected DMV Steering Committee, are already underway that align with the strategy that we're developing, that are some of these longer term things around, as Victor mentioned, the quantum, the development of a hydrogen focus for energy purposes, and then pandemic prevention and biodefense. So I will conclude just by saying that we're coming to the end of what we're calling REDS 1.0. And as we go into REDS 2.0, we'll really be hammering through the mechanics of a governance model, getting buy-in from elected officials, and doing some other things along the way to continue to make an impact and prove the concept. And that's the end of my deck.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that, Alex. As you know, we have been very fortunate that the Board of Supervisors has really supported us greatly in the area of talent. We started out with research many months ago, and then we followed that up with, of course, the talent strategy, and we hired DCI, and then that rolled into our first digital tool, which is really our talent hub website. And that's now grown, and it just continues to grow. And Mike Badd is going to talk about talent initiative metrics that we've been gathering, because we wanted to put together better ways to measure. So Mike, would you take the mic, Mike?
Sure. Thank you, Victor. Thanks, everybody. Real quickly, I'll just walk through a couple slides, just giving you an update on some of the metrics and against the targets that we've set for the fiscal year. And what I'm showing here right out of the gate are a couple of newly refreshed logos that we're using that DCI helped us put together to promote the region, not only to those in career, but on the right, those starting their careers, as we reach out to all the college and university students out there. So I wanted to just share that. Next slide, please. This I thought you'd find interesting if you haven't seen the numbers lately. This is from our subscription with Gartner Talent Neuron. So right now, top sort of center there's 47,000 jobs available, and it shows really, again, the importance of what we're trying to accomplish here, because there's 47,000 jobs in Fairfax County. You expand that out to our 10 jurisdictions and it's 94,000. So Fairfax, we're about half of the regions of our 10 EDA region numbers, but 94,000 across the region. You can see that on the bottom right, the companies and the job titles, the skills, no surprises there. And the tech companies, the government contractors, engineering type jobs, security clearances are critical. The median salary is a nice, healthy salary here in Fairfax County. When you expand that out to the Nova EDA, it actually drops to 118. So the county and the companies here in the county are paying a nice median salary. Next slide. So just again, walk through a couple of metrics just quickly. We'd set a target on our talent site of about 240,000 sessions coming in to the site from across the country. And I'll tell you right now, we're in great shape. We're probably on track to surpass, 300,000 sessions this fiscal year. The last 2 months, we've been averaging 30,000 sessions coming in, where we were right around 20,000 hovering there for our market. And I really see that continuing to grow as we shift some of that travel budget that we're not doing right now to really focus on some really strategic targeted digital advertising with military.com, clearancejobs.com, esports organizations and others to really continue to bring the right talent here to the region. So next slide. This next one, I think, sort of aligns with what David Ritchie was talking about from JBG on, and I know Rocky asked a question on the migrations and the folks leaving some of those larger cities. But what I really like from the data that we're seeing here on our site, hitting of those targeted cities that we're reaching, San Francisco is now #1 for sessions hitting our target over the last month. They were about #4 the last few months. They've gone up to #1 with New York #2. You can see DC, which was #2 on the list, is now dropped to 7. It's still a big piece of the equation, but I think we're doing well expanding our reach to not only educate on the opportunities here for those in the region, but expanding out across the country.
So just ask a quick question there, Mike, just to clarify that point. What we're seeing is the greatest visits to our talent site, people looking for employment, trying to learn about employment in the area, are coming from San Francisco and New York?
Yes. So yeah, so last month with the showing there the 15,000, we had closer to 29,000 total sessions, and you can see 4,200 of them were San Francisco. So yes, they're coming from those regions, and a lot of that we're marketing digital advertising through a number of means with DCI.
Interesting. And has that changed over since we launched the site too? Is it increased from the?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, we were, the numbers just continue to go up, averaging about 10,000 a month to 20,000 now, the last 2 months, 30,000. But also the cities, that have been creeping up to the list of the top 5 are outside of our region now. DC was the majority of the research searches up until the last couple of months.
Wow.
It's still a good component of it, but cities and metros outside of our region are what we're starting to get some more attention from, which is what we want to bring more talent here.
Certainly it's the 1-2 punch with David Ritchie's, where are people leaving from?
Right, New York, San Francisco. And so they're looking at our site. If we go to the next slide, I think it's going to talk about the job views. And so on the job views, again, that our target for the year is about 30,000 of those that come on to our site to go hit jobs. And again, remember, when they hit jobs, what we're saying here is it takes them to our company's career sites to a specific job. So it's not just, hey, are there jobs out here in the region, but these are searches that go right directly down to our companies and the careers and the jobs that they have posted that we're pulling down through Chmura and Jobs EQ. And I think an interesting stat here is about 27% of those 25,000 views are coming again from outside the region. Still a lot of them from here. We want to keep the talent here, but about 27% and growing are coming from outside of our region looking at jobs. Next slide. We have some work to do on this one. We set a target of 150 companies profiling on our site. We're at about 70 profiled right now. I think we're going to easily get to that number because we're starting to really promote, and we briefed the Nova EDA team last week to encourage them to get their companies to profile. So it again helps expand that reach for folks that might want to look at opportunities across the region versus just in our patch. But we're continuing, the business investment team and everybody's working hard to promote and profile their companies, because it's a really neat tool that allows folks to say, hey, I want to work for a corporate headquarters company. I want to work in Tyson's, and it takes them down to those companies and to their specific website. So it helps with their brand awareness and recognition. Last slide here, next slide is continuing to build the talent, the targeted contacts within our recruiters and HR. We've got about 680 now that we've captured, and with a target of 800, and I think we'll easily get there as we're working now with Northern Virginia Tech Council, for example, and going to be part of their filling the tech talent gap committee. So really expanding our reach to the recruiters out there, which I think is going to be compelling. And Kathy Riley and has been great on us getting strategic on how we leverage that database to make sure that because it's within our database of companies that we also are targeting and doing retention visits with. So we've, that tool works so well, we're able to make sure we segment out companies that we're currently engaged with for recruiting to the region, for example. Last thing I'll say is, next up is we have locked in today, May 20th, for our next virtual career fair. It's going to be college career fair, and I think this one's going to be hugely successful too. We're tying it closely with an esports event for the Mid-Atlantic region that'll reach out to 15 plus universities, and then we'll expand it out from there to all the HBCUs and national universities to really get some really great attendance for our next virtual career fair on May 20th. So with that, I'll turn it back to, do I turn this over to Alan now, or back to you, Alan? Victor?
Back to me for a second, Mike. Thank you.
All right.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. One, when we started, we didn't start this process. We didn't really go move in earnest on this until April of last year. So we haven't even been at this a year. That's one thing that blows me away. The second thing that does is that, look, the research that DCI did gave us such clarity on what we should do. And even when we launched the website in April of last year, I think we might have had 300 hits the first month. We're now at 100x that. You have to know that we are scaling this. And I think that to me is the most important thing, that we can get enough traffic so that we can get enough of the right talent to the companies, because that's what we're trying to do. We're ultimately trying to connect them. We're not recruiters. We're not trying to hire them. They have recruiters. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get the people, the right people, to the recruiters. They're asking for diverse talent. We're going after that market. They're asking for, specific genders. We go after those. They're asking for specific ages. We go after. We are trying to deliver what they're asking for. They're asking for cyber. They're asking for clearances. We want to deliver that. We don't want them to go through a process where the recruiters are talking to a person that doesn't lead someplace. So, but these metrics really help us hone in on that. And all along, when the county made the funding available, one of the key things was not just keep people here, but also bring people here. And I think we're achieving that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alan Fogg, who's going to talk about some of the other marketing communications item. He's the last person on this report. And then we'll turn it back to Vice Chairman Quigley. Alan?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Victor. Hey, good evening, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on how we're doing to promote the county and Northern Virginia as a great location for business and talent, and amplify the great work of our colleagues that you've heard tonight. Before I dive into this month's report, however, I have to relay some bittersweet news. Rebecca Gaiman, who is our account leader at DCI, since we brought them on as our marketing communications consultants in last January, is leaving DCI. She's taking a job with an organization in DC that promotes upskilling and reskilling of talent, especially for tech employers. It's a great opportunity for her, but I am sad because she's done a tremendous job coordinating her team with ours to create a really big team. She's been a tenacious, imaginative, collaborative, resourceful, and unflappable partner. And she has really helped us set the pace that we started a year ago that Victor just mentioned. So I want to thank Rebecca for her great work with us and wish her well in her new position. I do have a sneaking feeling, however, that we haven't seen the last of Rebecca, given the focus of her new employer. and our emphasis on talent. She's going to be replaced as account lead by Aaron Jones, who has led DCI's terrific media outreach team. He's been super to work with as well, getting Fairfax County and Northern Virginia great exposure in national and international outlets. And of course, we look forward to working with him in this expanded role. Okay, now that I have a hanky out and can dab my eyes, it's time to show some media outreach results that we got in January and February. Of course, we always put a good deal of effort around all of our events that we've been presenting, and the most recent virtual career fair directed at cyber and cloud talent was no exception. Our efforts resulted in an interview for Victor on ABC7 in DC. The host, Dave Lucas, had heard plenty about Silicon Valley and New York City shedding people during the pandemic, as we've talked about also tonight. And he appreciated Victor highlighting the fact that there are more than 80,000 jobs open in Northern Virginia, and about half of them in tech fields. Next slide. On the theme of thought leadership, DCI got Victor on a Motley Fool podcast that was focused on commercial real estate. It went to a national audience, of course, and the Motley Fool folks liked the podcast so much that they packaged it up and distributed it on their website. And of course, we amplified that effort. In addition to talking about how the Silver Line market has held up better than most other national office markets during the pandemic, Victor also had an opportunity to congratulate and thank the Board of Supervisors for its unprecedented work on the Fairfax RISE program that has reached 4,800 businesses. Of course, as you know, 72% of which were minority, woman, or veteran-owned. Next slide. And here's a piece that the Washington Business Journal did on the Richmond Highway Corridor market study that the EDA commissioned. As you know, the county has big plans for the corridor. In fact, it plans about $1 billion in investment, including a bus rapid transit line from Huntington to Fort Belvoir. The EDA was proud to partner with work with Partners for Economic Solutions to help the county government and the two supervisors who represent Southeastern Fairfax County to better understand current and projected market conditions in the corridor. The Business Journal story also noted the next steps that stakeholders can take to build a bright future for the corridor. Next slide. So how did our media outreach compare to other EDOs in January and February? Well, against this national group of organizations in competitive markets, we did better than all except the New York City Economic Development Corporation. It got a lot of media in the first couple of months of the year when its president resigned, and they got some attention for a major contract it let for engineering services. I will point out that the New York City Economic Development Corporation has a budget of about $900 million. So 100x, as Victor would say. Next slide. I'm happy to note that we had a good chunk of the share of voice of economic development organizations in the DC area in the first 2 months of the year. Now, Arlington did get some attention for a group appointed to guide development of the George Mason University campus there. And Montgomery County's Economic Development Group was noted in stories about the unfortunate death of Marriott CEO Arnie Sorensen and for a bio boot camp that is standing up. Meantime, the DC Deputy Mayor of Economic Development got media pickups mainly for pandemic-related relief for small businesses. But through all that, we got about 42% of the coverage during January and February. I'm proud to see that. Next slide. Let's look at some cumulative numbers for the fiscal year while we're at it. So including about $6 million in earned media value during January and February, we've had 28 million in earned media value since July. And you add, that's a $28 million. That's roughly about 28 to 1 return on our marketing communications dollars for this fiscal year. And that's so far. Next slide. So you combine that number with what we got in fiscal 2020, we are at $99 million and counting. Based on some placements from last week, I already know that we'll be able to report a major milestone to you during the April meeting. Next slide. Finally, here is this month's authority angle, where we highlight the attributes and assets that we hear about from businesses about why they start, expand, or locate in Fairfax County. Tonight's quotes come from John Sims, who has started a few businesses in Fairfax County, in fact, and last year dreamed up an idea for a, quote, smart box, unquote, that could be put on porches and used for frozen, refrigerated, and non-refrigerated home deliveries. He called his company Home Valet. And Walmart, in fact, is going to test the smart box this spring. So we featured Home Valet in a recent eBird Extra newsletter story. Our communications manager, Sharon Reed, talked with Mr. Sims, and note what he said about Fairfax County. Great business infrastructure, access to talent, and great educational opportunities for his children. Well, it sounds like what we tell businesses every day. I could not have said it better myself. We'll bring you another edition of the Authority Angle next month. So that's it for marketing communications tonight. Victor, back to you.
Great. Alan, listen, that was fantastic. I remember talking to Alan when I first got here and saying that, you know, one day he'll do 100 million. He and his team will do 100 million in earned media. And he cringed and he just looked at me with like just a look of terror. But as you can see, in less than 12 months, you know, look at where we are. It's unbelievable. I'm so proud of the team. They're just doing a great job. And with that, I will turn it back over to Vice Chair Quigley.
Awesome. Thanks, team. Wow, what a amazing job. And I don't know what else to say other than to say we're going to close it up. We'll certainly wish Rebecca good luck in her new position, helping to serve our community in such an important area. So congrats, and we look forward to hearing from you again, Rebecca.
Well, Commissioner Quigley, I have to say FCEDA just did too good of a job selling Northern Virginia's economy, because both at the beginning of this, my husband and I were in no way tied to DC, and now at the end of this, we're both going to be working and plan to relocate there. So I just want to say thank you to Victor, Alan, Mike, and the entire FCEDA and all the commissioners. This is the hardest working economic development team I've encountered in 9 years, but it's also the most inspiring. So, and that's what helps us do creative work across the 15 plus people who are working at DCI on this account. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
That's all we need to do to convince the workforce of the future is get them to work on the economy locally.
One by one, pick them off, yes.
That's right. Awesome. All right. With that, I'm going to call the vote to adjourn our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Commissioner Partridge.
Do I have a second?
Second, Rocky Mitchell.
Call the order. I guess do we call the order on?
You know, James, I might just ask: is there any objection to the commission meeting?
Yep.
Adjourn.
Right. Discussion or objection?
We're adjourned.
Okay, team. Fantastic. I'll turn it back to Andrew to close us out.
Thank you, Vice Chair Quigley. So that will conclude the March meeting of the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority Commission. I would like to thank everyone who has joined us for the meeting tonight. And if any member from the public has not asked a question yet, please email Cheryl Martelli of the FCEDA. Once again, her email address can be located in the chat box. And for more information about work of the EDA, please visit www.fairfaxcountyeda.org. Stay safe, be well, have a good night.